High in the rainforest canopy, where the air hangs heavy with humidity and filtered light glows through layers of green, a form barely moves among the branches. It does not call attention to itself. It does not rustle the leaves or flash bright colors. At first glance, it may not appear alive at all. Only a slow, deliberate twitch of a claw reveals the presence of one of the most biologically confounding mammals on Earth, the sloth. In a world where speed, agility, and constant motion dominate survival, the sloth remains defiantly slow, as if time itself passes differently through its body. It is not just the slowest mammal in the rainforest, it is among the slowest vertebrates on the planet, and yet, paradoxically, it thrives in one of Earth's most competitive ecosystems. The three-toed sloth, like its two-toed cousin, is an evolutionary outlier in every sense. Nearly every physiological feature seems designed not for performance, but for efficiency bordering on stasis. Its heart beats at an average of 30 to 40 beats per minute. Its core body temperature fluctuates several degrees with ambient conditions, an almost reptilian trait in a mammal. Digestion is not a daily event, but a week-long fermentation process that can account for up to a third of the animal's body weight. In human terms, this is the equivalent of carrying around an overfilled backpack of slowly rotting food as a permanent fixture. Yet this sluggish, inefficient metabolism is not a failure of evolution. It is the very engine of the sloth's survival. To understand the sloth's place in the ecosystem, one must first understand the nature of the rainforest itself. It is a system defined by abundance, of predators, of competition, of microbial decay. In this constant flux of life and death, movement often invites detection. Sharp eyes from above and venomous fangs below wait for signs of activity. Against this backdrop, the sloth's near invisibility is not laziness, it is armor. Its algae-covered fur blends seamlessly with mossy branches. Motionless for up to 20 hours a day, the sloth becomes part of the tree, a living piece of camouflage so complete that harpy eagles, among the most fearsome arboreal predators, often glide right past it. This camouflage is not a passive outcome, but a living partnership. The green hue in its fur comes from symbiotic algae that grow in its hollow hair shafts, creating a miniature ecosystem of moths, fungi, and bacteria. In return, these algae provide nutrients absorbed through the sloth's skin, an energy-saving bonus in an already constrained dietary budget. That budget is perhaps the greatest constraint the sloth must overcome. Its diet consists almost entirely of leaves, specifically from select tree species that are tough, low in caloric value, and rich in chemical defenses. Where other herbivores compensate through volume or specialized digestion, the sloth simply slows down. It has evolved one of the most complex and extended digestive systems in the mammalian kingdom, with a multi-chambered stomach designed to ferment fibrous material over several days. This allows it to extract energy with extraordinary efficiency, but at the cost of speed, thermoregulation, and activity. A sudden drop in ambient temperature can suppress the sloth's digestion entirely, sometimes leading to death. In essence, the sloth is locked in a metabolic dance with its environment, balancing just enough energy to survive, but never enough to rush. Despite these limitations, or perhaps because of them, the sloth has persisted with remarkable evolutionary stability. Fossil evidence suggests its lineage stretches back over 35 million years, with ancient ground sloths once the size of elephants roaming prehistoric landscapes. Today's arboreal species are dwarfed in comparison, but they have carved out a niche few others can occupy. By avoiding confrontation, competition, and even exertion, they reduce their exposure to threats that more active species cannot avoid. Even their reproductive strategy mirrors this energy economy. Females give birth to a single offspring after a gestation of 6 months, and the infant clings to its mother for nearly a year, learning the rhythm of stillness. One of the sloth's most perplexing behaviors occurs not in the trees, but on the forest floor. Roughly once a week, the sloth descends, awkwardly and vulnerably, to defecate at the base of its tree. This act exposes it to predators and burns precious energy, and for years, biologists puzzled over the evolutionary benefit of such a risky ritual. Theories abound that it helps fertilize the tree it depends on, or that it facilitates the life cycle of the sloth moths that lay eggs in the feces and whose larvae feed on it, continuing the mutualistic chain. Whatever the cause, this act of descent serves as a reminder that even in its minimalism, the sloth's life is intricately connected to the rainforest's web of interdependence. Survival in the rainforest is a game of trade-offs, and the sloth plays it with counterintuitive mastery. It lacks speed, strength, and aggression. It does not forage widely or maintain territory, yet it thrives in a habitat where such traits often dictate success. Evolution has not passed the sloth by. It has shaped it into a creature that rejects the rules most others must follow. The sloth is not an accident of biology, but a master of survival through restraint. In this way, the sloth becomes more than just an evolutionary curiosity. It is a study in alternative strategy, a lesson that survival is not always about being the fastest, the strongest, or the most adaptable. Sometimes it is about being still enough to be overlooked, slow enough to be underestimated, and efficient enough to endure when others fall. In the arms of the rainforest canopy, draped in green and silence, the sloth teaches us that in evolution, breaking the rules can sometimes be the best way to win. At first light, the fog drapes low over the still waters of a Tasmanian creek, the air cool and damp beneath the eucalyptus canopy. Leaf litter shifts in subtle ripples as freshwater currents push slowly around submerged rocks. Here, in this quiet fringe of southeastern Australia, where forest meets water in soft gradients of mud, moss and root, an animal glides into view with almost no disturbance. Its movement is smooth, calculated, entirely unlike any known mammal. A flash of fur, a flattened tail, a soft splash from a broad, pliable bill. The platypus has surfaced, and with it, every expectation of what a mammal is supposed to be begins to dissolve. From a biological standpoint, the platypus is nothing short of an evolutionary riddle, one that continues to baffle, even as genome sequencing and modern physiology peel back its layers. It lays eggs like a reptile. It produces milk like a mammal. It has a duck-like bill covered not in keratin, but a leathery sheath studded with thousands of electroreceptors, more than any known animal. It swims with a beaver's tail, walks with a reptilian gait, and males carry venomous spurs capable of inflicting intense pain. Early European scientists thought it was a hoax, a stitched-together fraud combining parts of several different species. But the platypus is no joke. It is a living window into the deep past, a relic from a time before mammals were firmly mammals, and long before the biological lines between reptile, bird, and mammal had hardened. As the platypus dives, its eyes close and its ears seal shut. Unlike most aquatic mammals, it does not rely on vision or hearing to navigate its underwater world. Instead, it disappears into total sensory darkness, guided by the minute electrical impulses produced by the muscles of its prey. Worms, insect larvae, and small crustaceans hiding beneath the gravel emit faint bioelectric signals, a hidden language the platypus can read with uncanny accuracy. As it sweeps its bill side to side along the creek bed, it maps the environment not by shape or sound, but by electric fields and subtle shifts in water pressure. This mode of hunting is so finely tuned that the platypus can distinguish between muscle twitches and the passive flow of water. It is the only mammal known to use electroreception as its primary sensory modality, placing it in a physiological class of its own, more comparable to sharks than to terrestrial relatives. This unique adaptation has deep evolutionary implications. The platypus belongs to a group of egg-laying mammals known as monotremes, a lineage that split from other mammals more than 150 million years ago. While marsupials and placental mammals evolved to nurture their young internally with placentas and postnatally with nipples, the monotreme strategy remained primitive. The female platypus lays leathery eggs and incubates them in a burrow, curling around them for warmth. Once hatched, the hairless, blind young nurse by licking milk that seeps through specialized mammary patches on the mother's abdomen. She has no nipples. This ancestral method of reproduction resembles the bridging point between reptiles and mammals, offering an evolutionary snapshot of mammalian development in its formative stages. Yet the platypus is not simply ancient, it is remarkably specialized. Its body is streamlined for aquatic efficiency. Webbed feet, which fold back on land to reveal claws for digging, make it a competent swimmer in both still and flowing water. Its fur is dense, waterproof, and thermally insulated, capable of trapping air for buoyancy and warmth, a critical adaptation for survival in cold mountain streams. Despite its strange appearance, everything about the platypus is adapted with precision for its ecological role. A semi-aquatic insectivore, navigating twilight rivers where stealth and sensitivity offer the highest returns. Even its most bizarre feature, The venomous spur found on the hind legs of males plays an unexpected role. Composed of a cocktail of defensins, proteases, and other peptides, the venom intensifies during the breeding season and is thought to be used in competition with rival males rather than defense against predators. It causes swelling, pain, and temporary paralysis in other mammals, including humans. In this regard, the platypus represents one of the few venomous mammals in existence, alongside species like the solenodon or the slow loris, all evolutionary curiosities in their own right. The ecosystems the platypus inhabits are no less dynamic. Freshwater creeks in southeastern Australia are rich in aquatic invertebrates, forming the base of a layered food web that includes amphibians, fish, and birds of prey. Platypuses occupy a mid-level predator niche, keeping insect populations in check while avoiding most predators themselves through elusive behavior and nocturnal habits. Their presence in a waterway is often a sign of ecological health. They are sensitive to pollution, sediment runoff, and disruptions to riverbanks. As such, they serve as biological indicators, their survival tethered directly to water quality, riparian vegetation, and the integrity of aquatic ecosystems. Recent genetic studies have only deepened the mystery. The platypus genome contains features found in birds, reptiles, and mammals, including a complex set of sex chromosomes that resemble those of chickens more than humans. It has genes for egg production alongside those for milk synthesis. It lacks a functional stomach. Its esophagus connects directly to its intestine, bypassing gastric acid altogether, a rare trait in mammals. These oddities do not arise from dysfunction, but from evolutionary efficiency honed over millions of years. The platypus is not an evolutionary leftover. It is a living blueprint for an alternative mammalian path, one that pursued electroreception instead of binocular vision, egg-laying over placental gestation, and venom in place of claw or fang. In the stillness of the early morning creek, the platypus surfaces again. Water drips from its fur in silver rivulets. Its bill twitches, sensing vibrations in the current. It pauses, then vanishes beneath the surface once more, as if the brief moment of visibility was an accident. For most observers, the platypus remains elusive, rarely seen, rarely understood. But behind its odd appearance is a deeply refined survival machine, shaped not by random whimsy, but by selective pressures that forged an animal supremely adapted to its environment, even if that adaptation defies classification. In every way, the platypus reminds us that evolution is not a straight line. It is a branching tree filled with experiments, some of which succeed not by following the rules, but by rewriting them. The platypus is living proof that even the most absurd combinations, bird bill, venom, eggs, and fur, can not only function, but thrive. In the tangled narrative of life on Earth, it is both a question mark and an answer. A creature that asks us to look closer, think deeper, and accept that nature's imagination often exceeds our own. At the edge of a dry woodland clearing, where the grass is thin and the acacia trees grow wide and low, the night air vibrates with life. Insects hum beneath fallen logs, unseen birds shift on high perches, and the dusty ground holds the faint tangled signatures of passing hooves and paws. Here, beneath moonlight fractured by thorny branches, something stirs that barely seems mammalian. It moves with a slow, deliberate rhythm, its limbs short but powerful, its posture low to the ground. Covered not in fur but in overlapping keratin scales, it resembles neither predator nor prey, more artifact than animal, an animated pinecone with a nose for ants. This is the pangolin, and it carries with it one of the most perplexing evolutionary solutions to survival ever devised. The pangolin is the only mammal on Earth fully encased in scales, armor made not of bone or shell but of toughened keratin, the same material found in human fingernails. These scales, sharp-edged and ridged for maximum deflection, provide nearly impenetrable defense against natural predators. When threatened, the pangolin does not run. It curls into a tight ball, tucking its vulnerable face beneath a spiked tail and allowing its exterior to absorb the worst of any assault. Lions, hyenas, even leopards have been recorded abandoning their attempts to breach this living fortress. The adaptation is so effective that the pangolin has, over millennia, lost nearly all need for speed or offensive tools. Its survival hinges instead on anonymity, armor, and a diet that keeps it underground or undercover. Pangolins are insectivores, specialists in exploiting one of the planet's most abundant and underutilized protein sources. Social insects. Termites, ants, and their larvae form the core of the pangolin's diet. And to access these insects, the pangolin has evolved an anatomy built around excavation and precision feeding. Its forelimbs are powerfully muscled, ending in curved claws capable of ripping open termite mounds or prying into rotting logs. Unlike carnivores that rely on teeth, the pangolin has no chewing apparatus. Instead, it wields a muscular, sticky tongue that can extend up to 40 centimeters, longer than its own body in some species, coated in viscous saliva secreted by enormous salivary glands that reach deep into its chest cavity. With rapid, darting movements, it licks up thousands of insects in minutes, while specialized muscles at the base of the tongue prevent prey from escaping. But perhaps more surprising than the pangolin's armor or its feeding anatomy is the way its entire physiology has been streamlined to support this narrow ecological role. It has no teeth, no vocal cords, and limited eyesight. Its hearing is decent, but not exceptional. Its sense of smell, however, is acute, allowing it to detect ant trails or termite pheromones from beneath the soil. Internally, its stomach is lined with keratinous spines, much like a bird's gizzard, and it ingests small stones to help grind the indigestible exoskeletons of its prey, a rare trait in mammals that harkens to evolutionary convergences with reptiles and birds. The pangolin's ecological role as an insectivore is more important than it first appears. In tropical and subtropical ecosystems across Africa and Asia, where pangolins are found, ant and termite populations are crucial for soil turnover, nutrient cycling, and forest structure. By preying on these insects in large numbers, pangolins act as regulators, keeping colonies from overwhelming the balance of their environment. A single pangolin may consume over 70 million ants and termites each year. Remove the pangolin from this system, and the ripple effects on vegetation, tree health, and insect competition can be profound, though they often go unnoticed until the absence becomes visible in the degradation of the habitat itself. Despite its biological success, the pangolin's reliance on stealth and secrecy has become its greatest vulnerability. Its natural defenses are ineffective against human predation, and in recent decades, it has become the most trafficked mammal on Earth. Tens of thousands are captured annually for their meat, considered a delicacy in some cultures, and their scales used in traditional medicine despite no proven therapeutic value. Their elusive nature, solitary behavior, and lack of vocalization make them difficult to study in the wild, which has hindered conservation efforts and left much of their behavior, particularly reproductive and social patterns, poorly understood. Females typically give birth to a single offspring, which rides on her back or curls beneath her protective tail, mirroring the adult's defense posture even in infancy. But how pangolins select mates, how far they range, and how populations interact across territories remains largely unknown. Their habitats vary widely, from savannas and dry woodlands to dense tropical forests, but their needs are specific. Stable insect populations, loose soil or old burrows for shelter, and minimal human disturbance. Pangolins are largely nocturnal, with activity patterns closely tied to temperature and humidity. In dry seasons, when insect activity drops, pangolins travel farther and dig deeper, expending significant energy in pursuit of food. Thermoregulation is a delicate balancing act. With poor insulation beneath their scales, they rely on behavioral strategies, burrowing during the day, emerging only in the cooler hours, to avoid overheating. Their metabolic rate is low, their movement energy efficient, and their exposure minimized. Like the sloth, the pangolin has made a lifestyle of reduction, doing less, moving less, risking less, but for entirely different reasons. Unlike the sloth, which stays still to disappear, the pangolin moves with calculated subtlety, its survival tied not to invisibility, but to passing unnoticed by being unremarkable. In ecosystems where speed and aggression often dictate dominance, the pangolin survives through absence, through silence, and through a physiology so foreign it almost escapes classification. It is not armored in the way reptiles are, nor does it share their lineage. It is not a rodent, not a carnivore, not a marsupial. Its closest relatives are unclear, and for decades it was placed in taxonomic limbo. Recent genetic studies suggest that pangolins form their own distinct order, Pholidota, more closely related to carnivores than to any other group. But they are distant cousins at best, united only by deep ancestral links and a shared mammalian blueprint warped by divergent pressures. As dawn breaks and the light warms the forest floor, the pangolin disappears as quietly as it arrived, shuffling back toward a hidden burrow beneath the roots of a fig tree. Its passage leaves no sound, no trace, just faint impressions in the dust and the upturned husks of a disturbed termite nest. Few animals are so well suited to remaining unseen, yet so important to the ecosystems they inhabit. In a time when visibility often dictates value, the pangolin reminds us that some of the most vital species are those that vanish before we learn how to protect them. It is, by all accounts, an evolutionary oddity. A mammal in armor, a hunter of insects, a ghost in the underbrush. But it is not a mistake. It is a solution, one honed by millions of years, wrapped in keratin, and balanced precariously between survival and extinction. In the pangolin, we see not a relic of the past, but a critical part of the living present. An animal that breaks the rules of what a mammal should be, and in doing so, reveals the full creative range of evolution itself. In the filtered light of a dry forest canopy, where shafts of sun flicker through the serrated leaves of acacia and fig trees, a creature perches unmoving on a narrow branch. The breeze stirs the surrounding foliage in gentle, irregular waves, casting fractured shadows on the dappled forest floor. From above, there is no shape, no outline, no color that demands attention, and yet the branch seems thicker than it should be. A subtle curve here, a slight bulge there. Then, with no warning, a blur of motion. A tongue, longer than the creature's own body, uncoils and strikes a grasshopper with brutal speed and mathematical precision. The insect disappears in less than a tenth of a second. In the stillness that follows, the predator remains nearly invisible. This is the world of the chameleon, a sniper hidden in plain sight, perfectly calibrated for a life of ambush, illusion, and control. There are over 200 species of chameleons, distributed mostly across Madagascar and sub-Saharan Africa, with some lineages stretching into southern Europe and parts of the Middle East. Their habitats range from tropical rainforests to arid savannas and even high-altitude scrubland. But their hunting and survival strategies remain remarkably consistent. Invisibility, patience, and precision. Unlike fast-moving predators that rely on pursuit or ambush mammals that use brute force, the chameleon is an apex micro-predator in the foliage layers of its habitat, feeding primarily on insects, small arthropods, and in larger species, even small birds and lizards. The most immediately striking feature of the chameleon is its camouflage, a subject often misunderstood. These reptiles do not simply mimic the background color to disappear. Their skin, made up of layers of specialized cells called chromatophores and iridophores, manipulates light through both pigment dispersion and nanocrystalline structures that reflect specific wavelengths. Beneath the pigmented layers, guanine crystals shift spacing based on the lizard's emotional and physiological state. When relaxed, the crystals are packed closely, reflecting shorter wavelengths and producing a bluish hue. When the chameleon is alert or agitated, the spacing increases, shifting the reflection toward yellows, reds, or even whites. This system allows not only for background matching, but also dynamic signaling, enabling individuals to convey dominance, submission, or reproductive readiness. Camouflage in this context is not passive but active, a constant negotiation between concealment and communication. In territorial disputes, rival males inflate their bodies, raise their crests, and flash bold colors to intimidate. During mating displays, males adopt vibrant patterns, while females modulate colors to indicate receptivity or rejection. This nuanced signaling plays out across the visual spectrum, invisible to most predators but deeply meaningful within the species. For chameleons, the ability to disappear and the need to be seen are not contradictions. They are two sides of the same evolutionary strategy. Equally distinctive are the chameleon's eyes. Unlike any other vertebrate, their eyes operate independently, capable of scanning nearly 360 degrees in asynchronous motion. When an insect is detected, the eyes lock forward in unison, providing stereoscopic depth perception essential for judging distance, a critical requirement for their ballistic feeding technique. The tongue, stored in a coiled position at the back of the throat, is launched with elastic recoil, not muscular force. Powered by a series of hyperelastic tissues and anchored to a modified hyoid bone, the tongue tip reaches its prey in milliseconds, hitting with an acceleration exceeding 500 meters per second squared, faster relative to body size than a bullet fired from a pistol. This speed is necessary because the prey, often flies, crickets, or beetles, are alert and capable of instantaneous flight. The chameleon, by contrast, must remain immobile to avoid detection. Any movement could alert not only its prey, but also predators like birds, snakes, or arboreal mammals. Thus, its success depends on minimizing movement while maximizing range and precision. The feeding strike is not merely an action, it is the culmination of multiple sensory systems operating in perfect synchrony: optical triangulation, neural timing, and mechanical release. Yet the chameleon's adaptations do not end with feeding and camouflage. Its locomotion is another study in specialization. Chameleons do not walk like other lizards. Instead, they move in a rocking, deliberate rhythm, lifting one foot at a time while keeping three others anchored. Their zygodactylous feet, split into opposing toes like tongs, allow them to grip narrow branches with precision. This is paired with a highly prehensile tail, capable of wrapping around twigs and acting as a fifth limb. In wind or while reaching across gaps, the tail provides balance and stability. This slow, almost mechanical gait is not a handicap but a tactical advantage. It mimics the natural sway of leaves in the wind, rendering the animal nearly indistinguishable from its surroundings. In predator-rich environments, motion is often more visible than color, and the chameleon's strategy is to blend with both. From an evolutionary perspective, the chameleon represents a radical departure from typical lizard design. Whereas most reptiles optimize for speed, defense, or brute strength, the chameleon has committed fully to stealth, precision, and vertical life. Even its skull reflects this adaptation. The bones are heavily ossified and fused, reducing weight while increasing stability for the tongue strike. The jaw structure is modified to anchor the tongue musculature and support the explosive release needed to feed. Its respiratory system is efficient enough to maintain stillness during stalking, conserving energy while supporting brief bursts of power. Despite its mastery of camouflage, the chameleon is not invincible. Habitat fragmentation, particularly in Madagascar, where over half the world's species are found, threatens its survival. Logging, agriculture, and urban expansion reduce the vertical complexity of forest systems, leaving chameleons exposed and unable to feed or reproduce effectively. Their reliance on specific microhabitats, particular trees, humidity levels, and light patterns, makes them vulnerable to even minor ecological shifts. Additionally, the exotic pet trade has placed pressure on wild populations, with many individuals failing to thrive in captivity due to highly specialized needs. Even within its ecosystem, the chameleon must navigate the constant tension between visibility and vulnerability. During the mating season, bright displays increase exposure to predators. Nesting females descend from trees to lay eggs in loose soil, a rare moment of terrestrial vulnerability that predators can exploit. Juveniles hatch after months of incubation and must climb to the canopy without parental guidance, relying solely on instinct and camouflage to survive their first days. In this way, every stage of the chameleon's life is a negotiation between the risks of visibility and the necessity of function. As the sun begins to set and the forest grows dim, the chameleon adjusts once more, its skin darkening to absorb warmth as temperatures drop. Its eyes scan independently again, watching both the shadows above and the movement below. Stillness returns. Only a faint ripple in the leaves hints at the predator lying in wait. To most observers, there is nothing there. No flash of fur, no gleaming scale. But for the chameleon, invisibility is not just protection, it is a way of life, a discipline perfected over 90 million years of adaptation. In a world defined by energy flow, light, and perception, the chameleon is not an anomaly. It is a precision-engineered answer to an ecological niche that demands both subtlety and strength. It hunts with optics, fights with color, and survives not by overpowering, but by outsmarting both prey and predator. It is a reptile that does not behave like one, a predator that does not chase, and a performer that rarely shows its face, until the moment it strikes. In the dense, humid rainforests of northeastern Australia and the island jungles of New Guinea, where the canopy closes overhead like a living ceiling and shafts of sunlight struggle to penetrate the leafy gloom, a shadow moves silently across the undergrowth. It is not the fluid slink of a cat or the measured pace of a primate. It is heavier, grounded yet eerily smooth, a towering figure that seems out of place in the modern age. Between the vertical ribs of tree ferns and the tangled lianas, a form emerges. Jet black feathers hang like coarse hair along a thick body built for strength, not flight. A deep cobalt neck rises, capped by a helmet of bone, a casque that catches the light like polished obsidian. Two crimson wattles sway with every step, vibrant warnings in a muted forest. And then, The feet come into view. 3 toes, one of them armed with a claw, long and sharp enough to disembowel. This is the southern cassowary, and it is as close to a living dinosaur as Earth still holds. Standing up to 2 meters tall and weighing over 60 kilograms, the cassowary is the heaviest bird in Australia and one of the most powerful in the world. Yet unlike the open-range emu or the wandering ostrich of Africa's savannas, the cassowary is a creature of cover. It moves through dense vegetation with uncanny speed and fluidity, aided by a wedge-shaped body and strong legs that part the undergrowth like a blade. The rainforest it inhabits is no gentle backdrop. It is a chaotic, layered world of thorned vines, sudden drops, and tangled roots. Here, visibility is minimal, escape routes are limited, and every footstep must be deliberate. The cassowary's powerful legs and reduced wings, more akin to paddles than flight structures, are not evolutionary leftovers. They are the product of deep specialization. Limbs built not to lift the bird skyward, but to drive it forward, forcefully, through the unrelenting weight of the forest. To understand the cassowary's evolutionary path, one must look backward, not just hundreds but tens of millions of years. It belongs to a group of flightless birds known as ratites, whose lineage traces to Gondwanan ancestors from an age when the southern continents were fused into one supermassive landmass. As tectonic shifts sundered the ancient forests, isolated populations adapted in wildly divergent ways. While the ostrich thrived in dry open terrain and the kiwi shrank into nocturnal obscurity, the cassowary remained a rainforest giant, retaining features that echo its ancient theropod roots: clawed feet, elongated neck vertebrae, and a fiercely territorial disposition. The cassowary's casque, the bony, keratin-covered crest atop its head, remains one of its most enigmatic traits. Once thought to serve as a weapon, modern research suggests it has multiple functions. Structurally, it helps the bird push through undergrowth by deflecting vines and branches. Acoustically, it may assist in amplifying or receiving low-frequency sounds, an adaptation that fits its communication style. Cassowaries emit deep, resonant rumbles, some of the lowest frequency calls among birds, possibly used for signaling through the cluttered acoustic environment of the rainforest. These infrasonic sounds, often imperceptible to human ears, carry far beyond visual range, allowing cassowaries to maintain spatial awareness of one another without relying on line of sight, an essential tool for solitary animals that occupy overlapping territories in a visual labyrinth. While typically reclusive, the cassowary is far from passive. It is an aggressively defensive species, particularly during breeding season or when cornered. Documented attacks on humans are rare but serious, often involving high-speed charges followed by leaping kicks delivered with dagger-like claws. In its natural environment, this behavior is not gratuitous violence but adaptive necessity. Potential threats include large pythons, crocodiles near forest streams, and predatory dogs introduced by humans. The cassowary's striking power, coupled with a dense layer of muscle shielding vital organs, makes it a formidable opponent, and a survivor in a biome where ambush and surprise are constant risks. Ecologically, cassowaries play a role few other creatures can replicate. They are frugivores, fruit eaters, but not just any frugivores. Their diet consists of hundreds of plant species, many of which produce large, hard fruits that few animals can swallow whole. The cassowary's digestive tract is uniquely equipped for this task. It ingests these fruits whole, digests the pulp, and defecates the seeds intact, often several kilometers from the parent tree. In doing so, it becomes one of the rainforest's most crucial long-distance seed dispersers. Some plants have evolved seeds that require passage through a cassowary's gut to germinate successfully. Without the bird, entire micro-ecosystems could collapse. In a forest where light, space, and resources are fiercely contested, this mobility of seed dispersal gives certain species a survival edge and makes the cassowary a keystone of forest regeneration. Reproduction, too, flips traditional bird dynamics. After a brief courtship, the female lays up to 5 large olive-green eggs in a shallow nest of leaves. Then she leaves. The male incubates the clutch alone, guarding and turning the eggs for about 50 days, and then raising the chicks solo for up to 9 months. This reversal of roles places intense pressure on the male, who must remain vigilant and territorial, especially in areas where ground predators may target the vulnerable young. During this period, his movements become more cautious and his range shrinks, yet his aggression intensifies. Any perceived threat, even a curious monitor lizard or an encroaching human, is met with decisive force. Despite its size and defensive prowess, the cassowary faces existential threats not from natural predators, but from human activity. Habitat fragmentation, road construction, and the encroachment of domestic animals continue to erode its already limited range. Vehicle collisions are a leading cause of mortality in certain regions, particularly when forests are broken into disconnected patches that force birds to cross open roads in search of food or mates. Additionally, feeding by well-meaning humans has led some cassowaries to associate people with food, resulting in more frequent confrontations. These are not signs of aggression for its own sake, but stress behaviors, outcomes of a shrinking, fractured ecosystem in which the cassowary can no longer vanish into deep cover. In the shadowed depths of the forest, the cassowary stands not as a relic, but as an apex survivor. Every aspect of its design, from its silence to its speed, from its digestive tract to its casque, tells the story of a lineage that chose not flight, but fortitude. It is a bird that remembers its ancestry not through resemblance, but through role. It controls space, commands fear, and carves pathways through the forest not with wings, but with will. To see a cassowary in the wild is not simply to witness a bird. It is to confront the weight of evolutionary history in living form. It is to be reminded that survival is not always about advancement or intelligence, but about integrity of purpose, the ability to become perfectly attuned to a place, to disappear in it, to shape it, and when needed, to defend it with lethal precision. In the cassowary, the rainforest keeps one last dinosaur at its heart, and it walks on two legs. Beneath the brittle canopy of Australian bushland, where the underbrush forms a patchwork of spinifex, banksia, and dry eucalyptus leaf litter, something ancient moves. The ground is dry, pockmarked by shallow scrapes and overturned stones, each one a clue left behind by a creature adapted not for speed or spectacle, but for quiet persistence. Its body is low to the earth, squat and rounded, sheathed in a coat of coarse fur and rigid spines. Its limbs, short yet powerful, work rhythmically to pry into termite mounds and soft soil. A long, slender snout probes forward with slow, determined intent. This is the echidna, a monotreme, an evolutionary holdover from a time when mammals were just beginning to diverge from their reptilian ancestors. It looks like a hedgehog, behaves like an anteater, and yet is genetically neither. And tucked deep within its genome lies a story stretching back over 200 million years. A story of survival not through change, but through endurance. Of all the traits that make the echidna a biological outlier, the most striking is its reproduction. Like its cousin the platypus, the echidna lays eggs, a feature so rare among mammals that only 5 species in the world, all monotremes, still do it. After mating, which in itself is peculiar, involving a line of persistent males trailing a single female in what's known as a mating train, the fertilized egg is laid not in a nest, but directly into a temporary pouch that forms on the female's abdomen. Just 10 days later, the leathery egg hatches into a jelly bean-sized hatchling known as a puggle. Sightless and hairless, the puggle remains in the pouch for several weeks, nourished by milk secreted from glandular patches of skin rather than nipples. When its soft body begins to sprout sharp spines, the mother deposits it in a burrow and returns only intermittently to feed it. The young echidna's development is slow, its dependence long, a pace reflective of the animal's entire evolutionary strategy. Unlike most mammals, which regulate their body temperature within a narrow range, echidnas exhibit thermolability, the ability to tolerate a wide range of body temperatures. In cooler climates, such as Tasmania's highlands or the Australian Alps, echidnas can enter a state of torpor, lowering their metabolic rate to conserve energy. This is not merely a response to cold, but a finely tuned survival mechanism that allows them to endure periods of resource scarcity. In fact, echidnas are among the few egg-laying mammals known to hibernate, their core temperature sometimes dropping below 10 degrees Celsius for days or even weeks at a time. This physiological flexibility gives them a distinct advantage in environments marked by extreme variability, from fire-prone shrublands to frostbitten plateaus. Their feeding strategy, too, is defined by patience and specialization. Echidnas possess no teeth. Instead, they rely on a highly adapted tongue, long and coated in sticky mucus, capable of darting rapidly to collect ants, termites, and grubs from deep within tunnels. Unlike the ballistic strike of a chameleon or the crushing jaw of a carnivore, the echidna's feeding is slow, methodical, and relentless. Its snout, rigid and elongated, contains electroreceptors that detect the minute bioelectric fields emitted by invertebrate prey. While this electroreception is more commonly associated with aquatic animals, such as sharks or the platypus, echidnas represent a rare example of this trait being deployed in terrestrial foraging. This ability becomes especially useful in dim conditions, such as at night, during rainfall, or when burrowing, allowing echidnas to locate prey hidden beneath layers of soil or rotting wood with surprising accuracy. Despite their inconspicuous size and slow gait, echidnas are impressively armored. The spines that cover their back, modified hairs made of keratin, provide effective deterrence against predators. When threatened, an echidna doesn't flee. It digs. Using powerful front limbs and a backward-tilted motion, it rapidly buries itself into the ground, anchoring with its spines and leaving only a bristling dome exposed. In harder substrates, it wedges itself between rocks or logs, curling inward to protect its vulnerable underbelly. Few predators can breach this defense, and most abandon the effort altogether. This defensive strategy reflects a broader evolutionary philosophy. Minimize risk, invest in defense, conserve energy, and persist. Ecologically, echidnas occupy a critical niche as invertebrate regulators. A single echidna can consume thousands of ants or termites in a day, limiting the proliferation of colonies that might otherwise overexploit plant root systems or outcompete other insect species. Their constant digging aerates the soil, facilitates nutrient cycling, and improves water infiltration, functions analogous to those of earthworms or wild pigs in other ecosystems. Over time, this bioturbation helps maintain the structural integrity and fertility of the land, particularly in Australia's often depleted soils. In environments recovering from fire or drought, echidnas are often among the first mammals to reappear, their resilience making them silent agents of ecological renewal. Yet despite their ecological importance and ancient lineage, echidnas remain shrouded in mystery. Their solitary lifestyle, cryptic habits, and aversion to open spaces make them difficult to study in the wild. Radio tracking has revealed vast home ranges, particularly in resource-scarce regions, with individuals traveling kilometers across harsh terrain in search of food or mates. They communicate little, if at all, beyond the breeding season, and their vocalizations are minimal, mostly soft grunts or huffs. Their longevity is notable. Some individuals in captivity have lived over 50 years. And while wild lifespans are harder to verify, they are believed to exceed 2 decades. This extended lifespan, coupled with low reproductive rates and delayed maturity, suggests a life strategy that hinges not on rapid proliferation, but on long-term survival, a strategy that predates the rise of placental mammals by tens of millions of years. In evolutionary terms, echidnas are not simply primitive, they are enduring. Their design reflects not a lack of advancement, but a form of success measured by stability and adaptability. While other lineages have risen and fallen, adapting to new roles or perishing in the face of ecological upheaval, the echidna has remained steadfast, a relic of deep time that still plays a vital role in the present. It survives not in spite of its strange biology, but because of it. As the sun begins to lower and the bushland cools, the echidna continues its quiet patrol, methodically overturning clumps of dirt, probing with its snout, flicking its tongue in and out with metronomic regularity. Around it, the ecosystem shifts with the hour. Birds call in the distance, insects hum to life, and shadows stretch long across the land. But the echidna moves on, undeterred by time or trend. It has seen ice ages come and go, watched continents split, endured fires, floods, and the arrival of humans. And still it persists. In the age of extinction, where fragility often masquerades as complexity, the echidna stands as a reminder that resilience can come from simplicity, from ancient solutions finely tuned that continue to work. In this walking paradox of mammal and reptile, of spikes and milk and eggs and electroreception, nature reveals not a mistake, but a masterclass in adaptation. The echidna may look like a creature from myth, but it is as real, as vital, and as enduring as the earth it digs. In the arid highlands of East Africa, where the earth cracks into salt pans and wind carries a ghostly haze of alkaline dust, a shimmering lake unfolds like liquid glass across a desolate plain. Its color defies prediction, milky white one day, bruised purple the next, depending on mineral concentration and light. This is no ordinary water body. The lake's pH rivals that of ammonia. Its surface temperature can reach near boiling during peak sun. Its salinity exceeds that of seawater several times over. And yet, moving in elegant ranks through the shallow edges, A colony of flamingos thrives, hundreds of thousands of slender birds, balanced delicately on one leg, bent beaks submerged upside down, filtering life from what appears, to almost every other vertebrate, as a toxic wasteland. Flamingos are more than flamboyant waterfowl. They are biochemical specialists, evolutionary oddities sculpted by some of the planet's most extreme aquatic environments. These alkaline soda lakes, like Kenya's Lake Natron and Tanzania's Lake Magadi, are hostile landscapes where few organisms persist. Fish cannot live here. Amphibians avoid the shorelines. Even insect larvae are rare. But one group of organisms blooms with explosive abundance: cyanobacteria and halophilic algae, organisms perfectly adapted to high salinity and alkalinity. It is on these microscopic producers that flamingos feed, extracting pigment-rich sustenance from a soup of microbes that flourishes precisely because no one else can eat it. The flamingo's most iconic trait, its pink plumage, is a byproduct of this chemical diet. The vibrant carotenoid pigments consumed through blue-green algae and brine shrimp are metabolized in the liver and deposited into the feathers, skin, and even yolk of their eggs. In truth, flamingos are born a dull gray-white. Their coloration deepens with time, and its intensity reflects dietary richness and physiological condition. In breeding colonies, pinker individuals are more attractive to mates, turning pigmentation into an honest signal of fitness. This chromatic adaptation is not ornamental. It is evolutionary branding, a marker of health in an environment where margins of survival are razor-thin. Yet color is merely the surface of this bird's strangeness. Feeding itself is a mechanical marvel. Unlike nearly all other birds, flamingos feed with their heads upside down. The upper jaw acts as a scoop, while the lower jaw houses a dense array of lamellae, comb-like structures that act as a filtration system. As the bird sweeps its curved beak through shallow water, a muscular tongue pumps rhythmically, drawing water in and forcing it out while trapping microscopic algae, plankton, and crustaceans. This strategy is more akin to baleen whales than birds, suspension feeding executed with precision. The beak's extreme downward curve, once thought grotesque or comical, is a masterstroke of specialization, refined over millions of years to exploit a resource-rich but otherwise unusable ecological niche. Thermoregulation in these saline deserts is no less important. Standing on one leg, once a zoological mystery, is now understood to reduce heat loss and muscular strain. By tucking one leg up into the body, the flamingo minimizes surface area exposed to the air, reducing convective heat loss, particularly when standing in cooler water. Intriguingly, flamingos can hold this posture for hours, even in sleep, supported by a passive mechanical lock in their leg joints that allows balance without active muscle contraction. It's a subtle but critical energy-saving strategy, one of many that define their lives on the brink. Their nesting grounds, too, demand resilience. When breeding conditions align, typically following rains that dilute lake salinity and prompt algal blooms, flamingos gather in massive synchronized colonies. Here, on desolate mudflats, they construct miniature volcano-shaped nests, each built by both parents from caustic, mineral-rich sludge that would corrode the skin of most animals. These nests lift eggs just high enough above the searing salt crust to avoid overheating or chemical damage. The chick hatches into an environment that would kill most vertebrates within hours, its only hope lying in the protection of its parents and a rapid acclimation to the alkaline world. Predation remains a threat, but only at the periphery. Few terrestrial predators brave the razor-sharp lake crusts or endure the burning water. Some raptors target young chicks during dry seasons when colonies are more exposed, and marabou storks occasionally raid nesting grounds. But largely, the flamingo's true predators are environmental. Fluctuations in rainfall, changes in salinity, microbial blooms that turn toxic, and the encroachment of human infrastructure. Their habitat is fragile in the most literal sense. Brittle crusts, shallow hydrology, and ecological dependence on the precise chemical recipe that fuels algal growth. Surprisingly, the flamingo's global range spans far beyond East Africa. 6 species exist across 4 continents, from the Andean plateaus of South America to the coastal estuaries of southern Europe and India. Each population exhibits slight morphological and behavioral differences, variations in leg length, beak shape, plumage intensity, each tuned to the specific mineral composition and food availability of its home environment. The Andean flamingo, for example, lives at altitudes over 4,000 meters, foraging in icy volcanic lakes laced with arsenic and sulfur. These birds survive not in spite of the chemical landscape, but because of it, exploiting food sources that have driven most other vertebrates away. What unites them is their commitment to specialization. Flamingos are not generalists. They are extreme ecological tacticians, filtering microscopic life from poison lakes, metabolizing toxins into beauty, and raising chicks on the edge of chemical ruin. Their survival depends on the integrity of their niche, and that niche is one of the most fragile on Earth. Human-induced climate change threatens to alter rainfall cycles and lake salinity. Water diversion, mining, and development around soda lakes reduce breeding habitats and introduce pollutants. For a species so finely balanced within its environment, even slight disruptions can cascade into catastrophic reproductive failures. Yet in the face of these pressures, the flamingo remains. It dances across caustic waters in synchrony, performs courtship displays with choreographed grace, and maintains cohesion in colonies of hundreds of thousands through vocal mimicry and visual cues. Its success is not measured by dominance or flexibility, but by elegance in adversity, by mastering a set of conditions so extreme that few others even attempt to compete. In the stillness of twilight, when the desert winds ease and the lake surface settles into a reflective plain, the flamingo stands alone, half submerged, half suspended, upside down, inverted in color and posture alike. It is a mirror to evolutionary ingenuity, to what happens when natural selection sharpens every feature for a single impossible role. In a world where rules define survival, the flamingo is a creature that breaks them, gracefully, efficiently, and with startling beauty. In the early morning stillness of the Australian bush, where the air is thick with the scent of eucalyptus oil and the landscape shimmers with rising heat, a quiet figure clings motionless to a smooth-barked tree. The forest around it crackles with cicadas, their song rising like static through the canopy. Rainbow lorikeets chatter in bursts, darting between foliage. Below, wallabies pick their way through the underbrush, but the figure remains unmoving, wedged high in the fork of a grey gum, its limbs folded into the tree as though it was sculpted from bark and fur. This is a koala, a creature so utterly at odds with the vitality around it that it appears almost comatose. And yet, within that slow-beating heart, lies a biological puzzle of astonishing complexity. A mammal that survives by consuming one of the most toxic, nutrient-poor diets in the natural world. The eucalyptus tree, so iconic to Australia's landscape, is no gift to herbivores. Its leaves are laced with compounds designed to repel or poison anything that attempts to eat them. These include phenolics, which interfere with digestion, terpenes, which are toxic to cells, and astringent tannins, which bind proteins into useless clumps. The oil alone is flammable and volatile, making the trees explosive hazards in fire-prone regions. And yet the koala, Phascoloctus cinereus, has built its entire life around this dietary challenge. It consumes almost nothing else. Of the more than 700 species of eucalyptus, only about 30 are suitable food sources. And even among those, individual trees may be accepted or rejected based on subtle chemical differences detectable only through the koala's highly refined sense of smell and taste. To deal with this biochemical gauntlet, the koala's digestive system has evolved into a marvel of microbial engineering. Central to this system is an enormous cecum, a fermentation chamber more than twice the length of its body, which houses a diverse community of symbiotic bacteria. These microbes break down fibrous cellulose, neutralize toxins, and extract what little nutrition the leaves provide. The process is slow, inefficient, and heavily dependent on maintaining the right balance of gut flora. Koalas are born sterile, so to acquire this microbial arsenal, joeys consume a special form of feces known as pap, a semi-liquid excretion from the mother that serves as an inoculant, transferring the essential bacteria needed for life on eucalyptus. Without this transfer, the young will not survive. Energy, unsurprisingly, is a constant constraint. Eucalyptus leaves yield very little protein and fewer calories per gram than nearly any other leaf in the animal kingdom. The koala responds by conserving everything: heat, motion, metabolic activity. It sleeps for up to 20 hours a day, waking only in brief spells to shift position, feed, or climb to a new perch. Its brain, unusually small for its body size, is pressed tightly against the inside of the skull, surrounded by fluid-filled space, a trait known as cranial atrophy. Some have speculated this shrinkage is an energy-saving adaptation. Less neural tissue means less metabolic demand. Koalas display relatively little behavioral flexibility, and their responses to novelty are often slow or maladaptive. In this light, the shrunken brain may not be a defect, but a survival trade-off, a conscious surrender of complexity in favor of specialization. That specialization runs deep. Koalas rarely drink water. Their name likely derives from an ancient word meaning no water, and instead rely almost entirely on leaf moisture for hydration. During heat waves, however, this strategy falters. As temperatures soar, the moisture content in eucalyptus declines, while the metabolic cost of thermoregulation increases. Dehydration becomes a lethal risk. In response, some koalas will descend to drink directly from puddles or water troughs, a behavior almost never seen in cooler decades. This shift offers a glimpse into the species' fragility under climate change, where rising temperatures and altered rainfall patterns are already reshaping the physiological boundaries they can endure. Movement is equally minimized. Koalas are built for vertical climbing, not for terrestrial travel. Their limbs are long and muscular, with highly developed opposable digits and rough padded palms adapted for gripping bark. The claws are formidable, not for digging or tearing, but for anchoring to the often smooth, sloping trunks of eucalyptus species like Eucalyptus camaldulensis or Eucalyptus globulus. Despite their apparent lethargy, koalas are capable climbers, navigating trees with deceptive speed and precision. But once in position, they rarely leave. Territories are small, overlapping slightly at the edges, and adult males mark their range with chest gland secretions and low-frequency bellows that echo through the forest in the breeding season. Reproduction follows a seasonal rhythm, triggered by hormonal cues and environmental conditions. A dominant male may sire multiple joeys within a single area, but parental investment is entirely maternal. After a gestation of just 35 days, the undeveloped newborn crawls into the mother's pouch, where it will remain for 6 months, nursing and growing before emerging into the wider world. Even then, it clings to the mother's back for weeks, learning to feed and recognize suitable trees. Maturation is slow. Most females don't breed until 3 years of age, and even under ideal conditions, lifetime reproductive output is low. Another reflection of the high-investment, low-reward economy that defines koala biology. Yet the greatest threat to the koala does not come from its diet or its predators, which are few, but from the cumulative impacts of human disturbance. Habitat loss remains the primary danger, as eucalyptus forests are cleared for agriculture, urban development, and logging. The fragmentation of these forests forces koalas to cross open ground, roads, lawns, fences, where they are exposed to vehicle strikes, dog attacks, and heat stress. Additionally, infectious disease is taking its toll. A bacterial pathogen, Chlamydia pecorum, spreads through populations, causing infertility, blindness, and systemic illness. The disease thrives in stressed individuals and compromised environments, turning every disruption into a compounding biological threat. Despite all this, the koala endures. It persists in fragmented woodlands, in protected reserves, even on the fringes of suburban neighborhoods. Its resilience is understated, rooted not in flexibility, but in a stubborn commitment to a deeply specialized way of life. It represents a lineage that has chosen depth over breadth, a creature that has mastered one niche so thoroughly that it cannot survive outside of it. In an evolutionary sense, it is both masterpiece and cautionary tale, an animal that works only because everything else around it, the forest, the leaves, the climate, the microbes, cooperates. As dusk falls and the forest cools, the koala begins its quiet shift. It stirs, stretches, and inches toward a new patch of leaves. The movement is slow, deliberate, but entirely sufficient. With each mouthful, it consumes not just foliage but time, the accumulated lessons of millions of years of adaptation. Its survival is improbable, even illogical by modern standards. But it is real. The koala remains, in every sense, a creature shaped by constraint. A soft-clawed paradox balanced delicately in the treetops of an unforgiving land. The desert is not just a place, it is a crucible, a shifting, sun-scorched test of endurance, where life must overcome not only scarcity, but heat, wind, and desiccation. In the vast dunes of the Sahara and across the gravel plains of Central Asia, where temperatures climb past 50 degrees Celsius and water becomes a vanishing memory, survival requires more than strength. It demands adaptation at the molecular level, an intimate mastery of heat, salt, and time. And into this extreme walks the camel, not with desperation but with practiced confidence. Long-legged, high-headed, and seemingly impervious to the sun's fury, the camel is less a beast of burden than a biological anomaly, an evolutionary alchemist that turns desert hardship into opportunity. The first thing the desert teaches is that water is everything, and the camel has made its entire physiology a lesson in its conservation. Contrary to myth, the hump is not a water reservoir. It stores fat, not fluid, and this distinction is critical. Fat storage in the hump allows the camel to avoid insulating the rest of its body, keeping the trunk lean and better equipped to radiate excess heat. But more remarkably, metabolizing this fat produces water as a byproduct, nearly a gram of water for every gram of fat oxidized. In a place where drinking opportunities may be weeks apart, this internal water factory gives the camel a chemical edge, converting stored energy into hydration at the cellular level. Beyond internal chemistry, the camel's circulatory system is finely tuned for thermal and osmotic balance. Unlike most mammals, which begin to suffer organ damage with even modest water loss, camels can withstand dehydration exceeding 25% of their body weight, a level lethal to nearly all other vertebrates. Their red blood cells are elliptical, not round, and exceptionally elastic, allowing them to maintain circulation even as the blood thickens with dehydration. These cells can swell to over 200% of their volume without rupturing, a trait that allows the camel to rehydrate rapidly when water becomes available. In a single session, a camel may consume over 100 liters of water in 10 minutes, a feat that would cause osmotic shock in almost any other species. Yet water conservation is not just internal. Every aspect of the camel's external anatomy has been optimized to prevent unnecessary loss. Its nostrils can close to exclude sand, but more importantly, they are lined with convoluted passages that reclaim moisture from exhaled air. As the camel breathes out, the warm, moist vapor from its lungs passes through these narrow nasal channels, where the temperature drops and water condenses. That moisture is absorbed by the nasal tissues and recycled into the bloodstream, a living version of an evaporative still. Over time, this mechanism saves liters of water that would otherwise be lost to the air. Even the camel's skin and fur are designed for survival in superheated silence. The outer coat is thick and reflective, deflecting solar radiation while insulating the body beneath. But the insulation works both ways, trapping internal heat and delaying its release, allowing the camel's core temperature to rise gradually during the day without the need for sweating. Most mammals maintain a tight thermal homeostasis. The camel permits its core temperature to fluctuate by as much as 6 degrees Celsius across the day. This passive thermoregulation minimizes evaporative loss, the most water-expensive form of cooling. When it does sweat, the process is tightly controlled, with sweat glands only opening when absolutely necessary, and only in areas that will yield maximum cooling for minimum cost. The camel's stride, long, rolling, almost hypnotic, belies another strategy. With broad, leathery foot pads, it walks atop sand instead of sinking into it, conserving energy that would be wasted on lifting its legs from each step. Its gait is a pacing walk, moving both legs on one side at the same time, creating a smoother ride for loads and a more stable rhythm for long-distance travel. These mechanics reduce muscular fatigue and keep body movement efficient across hundreds of kilometers. Behavioral adaptations further support this efficiency. Camels travel at dawn and dusk, resting during peak midday heat. When food is scarce, they switch easily between herbaceous plants, dry scrub, thorny shrubs, and even salty halophytes, plants that would dehydrate most grazers. Their mouths are armored with tough papillae, allowing them to chew coarse desert vegetation without injury. The gut is a 3-chambered fermentation system, slowly extracting every possible calorie and water molecule from the sparse biomass they consume. When necessary, they even extract moisture from dry feces, which emerge nearly pellet-like, and produce highly concentrated urine to minimize water loss, evidence of renal systems under evolutionary pressure for millennia. Socially, camels are mobile survivalists. Wild Bactrian camels, critically endangered and found in the remote deserts of Mongolia and China, navigate some of the most barren regions on Earth. They have been recorded drinking brackish water from salt wells that would poison other mammals. Their domesticated cousins, dromedaries, have served as transport animals for thousands of years, but their physiological resilience long predates domestication. Whether wild or bred, the camel's biology speaks to a continuous lineage of adaptation, refined, not reinvented, to meet a specific and demanding ecological niche. Predation is rare but not absent. In their native range, large carnivores like Asiatic wolves or big cats may target young or weakened individuals. But the adult camel is formidable, not just in size but in durability, thick skin, muscular flanks, and the ability to deliver a powerful kick make it a difficult target. Disease and starvation are more consistent threats, especially as human expansion fragments rangeland and introduces competition with livestock. Climate change, too, threatens the delicate timing of seasonal water sources, challenging even the camel's legendary endurance. As dusk approaches and the sun dips behind the dunes, the desert undergoes a rapid transformation. The air cools, the wind stills, and shadows stretch across the ochre sands. A small caravan of camels plods silently across the open terrain, leaving faint impressions in the sand that will vanish by morning. Their breath is steady, their pace unwavering. Each step is a continuation of an evolutionary journey that began in North America millions of years ago and spread across continents, adapting not through brute force, but through cellular precision and physiological grace. In the camel, the desert has not found a victim but a partner, a creature that mirrors its extremes with extremes of its own, a mammal that rewrites the rules of hydration, temperature control, and survival itself. It is not merely enduring the desert, it has become inseparable from it. A body that defies heat, a bloodstream that defies thirst, a species that defies odds. The camel is not a relic of a bygone age. It is the embodiment of nature's capacity for biological innovation under pressure, a living laboratory of survival chemistry, walking slowly but confidently across a world most animals dare not enter. As dawn breaks across the African floodplains, the surface of the river shimmers with a deceptive calm. Wisps of mist hover above slow-moving channels, and the air hums with insect life. Dragonflies skimming low, storks stepping silently through reeds. In the shallows, the reflection of a sky-tinged gold ripples briefly, then vanishes under a swelling bulge of water. A pair of small, rounded ears rises, swivels, then eyes, then nostrils just breaking the surface. The rest remains submerged, a hulking mass hidden beneath the waterline. This is the domain of the common hippopotamus, one of Earth's most misunderstood animals, a bulk of placid flesh on the surface, but beneath it, a complex and dangerous machine of dominance, deception, and sheer physical force. Despite its ungainly appearance and vegetarian diet, the hippo occupies an ecological and behavioral niche more akin to that of a territorial predator than a herbivore. Its body, which can exceed 1,500 kilograms in adult males, is built not for flight, but for stand-your-ground resistance. The torso is barrel-shaped, dense with muscle, and sheathed in skin 2 inches thick, not to repel claws or teeth, but to buffer the force of other hippos. Unlike the ruminants that graze the savanna in herds and rely on flight or camouflage to avoid carnivores, the hippo moves through its world with the confidence of an apex species that fears little and is feared by many. By day, the hippo resides almost exclusively in water, not because it is aquatic in the traditional sense — hippos cannot swim — but because their massive bulk is better supported by buoyancy. Instead of paddling, they walk underwater, bouncing from riverbed to surface in slow-motion hops. Their eyes, ears, and nostrils are positioned high on the skull, allowing them to remain mostly submerged while retaining full sensory awareness. When underwater, their nostrils close and they hold their breath for 5 minutes or more, sometimes sleeping entirely submerged in the shallows, their body unconsciously rising for air thanks to reflexive breathing, even while the brain is at rest. But the peace of these watery sanctuaries is superficial. Beneath the surface, hierarchy rules. Males fight violently for access to territory, which typically includes a stretch of river and a harem of females. These battles, often silent and hidden below the waterline, can be catastrophic. Jaws open at 150 degrees and snap shut with crushing force. The canines of a hippo, often exceeding 50 centimeters in length, are not designed for feeding, but for combat. They are self-sharpening weapons of intimidation, goring, and defense. Fights between rival bulls can last for hours, resulting in deep puncture wounds, torn flesh, and permanent disfigurement. Even dominant males are covered in scars, silent testament to the brutality of maintaining power in these crowded aquatic arenas. Feeding occurs mostly at night. As the sun sinks and the heat subsides, hippos leave the safety of the river and fan out into the grasslands, following well-worn paths to grazing grounds. Here, their behavior more closely resembles that of their dietary category. They crop short grasses with their wide lips, consuming 30 to 40 kilograms of vegetation per night. But this movement is not without risk. Hippos, despite their water-bound daytime personas, can travel several kilometers inland, and when spooked or confronted, they charge with startling speed, reaching up to 30 kilometers per hour over short distances. Their unpredictability and immense power are what make them, year after year, one of Africa's deadliest animals to humans. Paradoxically, the hippo's aggression does not stem from carnivory or hunting instincts, but from a need to protect space and structure in a semi-aquatic society defined by rigid rules. Mothers will defend calves with lethal force. Dominant bulls defend river corridors not for feeding rights, but to control access to breeding. And in regions where waterways shrink with the dry season, forcing populations into denser and denser concentrations, tempers fray and violent encounters become more frequent, not just between bulls, but among females, between young males, and sometimes even directed outward at crocodiles, boats, or unlucky passers-by. Yet the hippo also plays a profound and often overlooked ecological role. As ecosystem engineers, they transfer vast quantities of organic matter from land to water. Their nighttime grazing concentrates nutrients from grasslands and redistributes them through their dung, which accumulates in rivers and lakes. In moderation, this fertilization supports aquatic food webs, feeding algae which feed insects, which in turn sustain fish and birds. But when populations become unnaturally dense, as has happened in some human-altered landscapes, the sheer volume of waste can disrupt oxygen levels, triggering algal blooms and fish die-offs. The hippo, in this sense, is a keystone species with the power to maintain or destabilize aquatic ecosystems, depending on the balance of its own numbers. From an anatomical perspective, the hippo reveals a range of adaptations that reflect its hybrid life between land and water. Its skin, hairless and nearly naked, is susceptible to drying and cracking under the intense African sun. To counter this, it secretes a reddish fluid, sometimes called blood sweat, which acts as both a sunscreen and an antibacterial agent. This secretion is not sweat in the mammalian sense, but a unique biochemical compound that protects the skin from UV damage and infection. Because of this adaptation, hippos can remain exposed for hours on sandbanks or in shallow water without burning or suffering from microbial threats. Thermoregulation is further managed through behavior. Hippos position themselves strategically in deep pools during the hottest hours, sometimes stacking atop one another in densely packed pods that reduce surface area exposure. In cooler months or elevated regions, they can be seen basking on riverbanks to absorb solar warmth. These shifts, subtle and largely instinctive, allow the animal to navigate thermal extremes without expending unnecessary energy. A strategy not of brute endurance, but of careful moderation. Reproduction, like all aspects of hippo life, occurs in the water, a site of both vulnerability and protection. Copulation is often violent and risky for females, sometimes requiring multiple attempts and ending in injury. Calves are born after 8 months of gestation and emerge underwater, taking their first breaths as they surface beside their mother. For the first few weeks, the young remain nearly inseparable from her, riding on her back, nuzzling her for milk, learning the rhythms of the pod and the dangers of both land and river. Predation of young hippos is rare but possible. Nile crocodiles, lions and hyenas may target isolated calves, but with vigilant mothers and the bulk of a protective pod, few succeed. As the sun sinks and the water cools, the river comes alive with hippo movement. Grunts echo through the air like distant drums, and ripples spread as the first animals emerge from the shallows, moving up ancient paths worn into the soil. Their shapes, silhouetted against the twilight, evoke both awe and caution, a reminder that power need not be predatory to be dangerous, and that bulk can be deceptive when combined with territorial resolve. The hippo is a paradox, gentle in its diet, violent in its defense, slow in appearance, swift in retaliation, aquatic in reliance, terrestrial in need. It is not a beast of savagery, but of limits, physical, spatial, and social. and it enforces those limits with extraordinary force. For all its comical bulk and apparent laziness, the hippo is one of nature's most efficient rule enforcers, a body designed not to chase prey, but to shape the land and hold the line. In this great web of African life, the hippo stands not on the fringe, but in the middle, a vegetarian tank that patrols its stretch of water like a cold-blooded general, indifferent to predators, indifferent to pity, tuned only to the survival logic of its own world. In its massive frame and bone-breaking jaws lies a single truth. In evolution, peace and power are not opposites. Sometimes they share the same muddy bank.